Hey everybody, this is Joe the Composer here, and this is my very first game devlog. In it, I am going to demonstrate how I turned this.
Yes! Yes! No! Yes! 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 No! Yes! No!
And turned it into this. But what was that sound that you just heard? That is the sound of a monster breathing. But why? I'm actually happy to say that there is a reason why this sound exists, and it's because I am currently working on an Eldritch horror game. It's called... It's going to be available on Steam late October 2024. The good people at Indie Game Academy paired me up with the people that I'm working with now, called Team Moonstorm, and it's such a privilege to get to work with people who are not only knowledgeable and extraordinarily talented at what they do, and are passionate about what they do, but are also passionate about the game that we're all working on. And that's very special. And this is probably one of my favorite things that I've done to date. So please, if you're watching this and it's out, please go out and play it. I really think you'll enjoy it. But let's get back to the what. The what is a monster breathing. There are going to be parts in the game where the monster is going to be close to the player. So the player has to be able to hear the monster breathing as like an indicator of how close they are. And so when I was tasked with having to make this, I was like, okay, no BS, no sound libraries, nothing stock, nothing cookie cutter. I'm going to hand tailor this sound like I do with a lot of the sounds that I make for any game that I work on. Anything that can't be recorded in real life, like the sound of a light switch or a dog barking or a footstep, I want to make myself. And the way that I like to go about making them is by taking audio from other things that I love, like professional wrestling, and completely altering them, making them completely unrecognizable from the source material, and then bending them and molding them into the thing that I need them to be. And that's exactly what I did here. My approach for things like this is always musical, because at the end of the day, I am a musician and a composer first. So I like to take these things and break them down into musical elements so that I could better picture it in my mind's ear. How am I going to approach this sound? So what is a monster breathing? A monster breathing is something that's rhythmic, very, very low, probably pretty slow, and very, very growly. And when I thought rhythmic, I thought, well, Bryan Danielson saying yes and no would be absolutely perfect for this purpose. Thank you so much, Bryan Danielson, for being one of the best wrestlers, if not the best wrestler in the world for at least the last 15 years. That's a conservative number. And congratulations on your big win at Wembley. So that's what this video is. It's my entire process. I recorded myself in real time doing all of this, getting the sounds together, cutting it all together, everything. I didn't have it all planned out perfectly. I knew that I wanted to use those sound clips before I started recording, but I didn't know the exact process. I knew pretty much what it was going to be like, but I really hope you enjoy it. I take great pride in my work and doing what I do as a sound designer and as a composer, and I really look forward to doing more of these, hopefully in a bit more of a condensed fashion, and maybe even doing some breakdowns of some of the music that I've made for games over the years, or doing what I did for this, but for a song. And I really hope you enjoy it. So the first step in my process was dumping the WAV files of the yeses and the nos into Ableton as separate tracks. From there, I was able to scrub the audio and see where each yes and no began, and cut, so that way each yes and each no was its own individual clip. From there, I was able to start moving things around and putting them in whatever order I chose to do. I remember likening it to arranging for an orchestra, where it's like, okay, the clarinet plays this, well, the French horns play that, and then there's going to be like call and response with the clarinets and the flutes and all that stuff. But instead, it was just a wrestler yelling yes and no. The reason for doing this is to create a more dynamic feel. I don't want just a bunch of yeses and then a bunch of nos, because that's not as interesting. I wanted a more lively feel to the breathing, and one of the ways that I went about doing that was rearranging the different voice clips. I remember at one point I was listening through the yes audio, and I overheard Jerry Lawler make this comment right here.
Yes!
This is an idiot.
Oh, wait, hang on.
Yes!
This is an idiot.
And I got a huge kick out of it, mostly because I was projecting forward. Like, oh man, am I going to be able to still hear that this guy's an idiot, like, in the final audio? Because that's the other thing, is that this is an Easter egg for me. Doing all of this stuff is just, like, I get to make Easter eggs for myself and then put it in a game. Spoiler alert, I can't tell. The next step was to take this candy corn looking Frankenstein clip and make it all one track. And the best way I know how to do that is to route the audio track below it to track number 1 and then record it so that way it's all one thing. After doing all that, I started lowering the pitch, and I knew that I wanted it to be both slow and deep. So the first thing I tried was lowering the pitch first by an octave with warp disabled, which sounded like this.
Yes!
Okay. And then I decided that that was too goofy, so I re-enabled the warp function and lowered it by 4 octaves, and that's how I got it to sound like this. Now, the warp function is an interesting thing. In Ableton, the warp function, when it's enabled, means that whenever you lower the pitch, it doesn't extend the length of the track, it doesn't slow it down. The warp function also speeds up playback if you were to crank up the tempo in your Ableton project. And the reason I bring that up is because it will come up later on. So then after that, export that track, and then dumped it into its own document, start from scratch, and then I decided to start playing around with the tempo in the document. I lowered it all the way down to 20 beats per minute, which is the lowest tempo that Ableton will let you set it to. I knew I wanted the track to be slower, and I also wanted to lengthen it some, and this was my first attempt at trying to do that. But all toying around with the tempo got me was this. And it sounds like shit. It sounds like a jammed printer or a stuck motor, or just, it sounds like something's broken. So I had to go back into the previous document and start toying around with the original track. And because I knew I wanted a track that was both pitched down and longer, I decided to disable warp and then start playing with the pitch. Because now lowering the pitch will make it longer. But since I got what I wanted at 4 octaves, lowering it at 4 octaves with warp disabled results in about a 11-12 minute track. No game needs 11 or 12 minutes of just a monster breathing. Or maybe some do, but definitely not this one. And then I dumped it into its own document again, lower it by another 2 octaves with warp enabled this time so it doesn't get any longer. And that was like the baseline for the breathing, more or less. Let's hear it. And from here, we just have to add our bells and whistles. First thing was to add on reverb. Glaze Verb, for my money, is like the best free plugin that I've ever encountered. I use it on it has so many applications. I just love it. It's made by the good folks at Dog Sample, and it's just loaded with features and different parameters you can play with. It comes with like a huge library of presets. I just absolutely adore Glaze Verb. I could do a whole video on it. But anyway, I knew that this track was going to need reverb, so immediately put on Glaze Verb, and I actually had a preset from another piece of sound design that I've done for Rapid Eye Madness that will be covered in another video. So I decided to apply that same reverb effect to this, and it sounds fantastic. Check it out. Better. All right, it's almost perfect. It's so close. Next thing was I wanted to add a little extra gurgliness to the sound, like almost like a wet churning sound or something like that. And I tried to go about it a few different ways, with isolating clips from the breathing itself, pitching it up, and trying to do all this stuff, toying around with the parameters on the reverb to get different effects, and it just wasn't working out. So I decided, okay, you know what, if I want wet, I should go get wet. So I hopped onto YouTube, and the first thing that came to mind was the sounds of water dripping off of a stalactite, and that was where I got this from. Which, in hindsight, is a terrible idea because it already has its own reverb. It has a lot of background noise, like it sounds a lot like rain. It's really, really busy. It's not a good sound effect, but I tried, and it sounded like shit. Just check out what I did with this. Look at this. This is what I was able to achieve. It sounds kind of like shit. Okay. That. Terrible. Like I said, it fucking sucked. It sounded like such shit, but it was kind of funny. I found it funny at certain points. Like here. Okay. And so I decided to, again, try something else. Next thing I thought would be great was a leaky faucet, which was perfect. Dumped it in, and because it was a much shorter clip, I cut up the individual drips and started placing them in different parts on the timeline, so that way it's not all one place. Try to space it out. I guess this is another bit of orchestration that I did, but instead of telling an orchestra what to do, like over 100 people, I'm figuring out where the drippy noises of the mouth of an Eldritch horror should go. Ah, the life of a sound designer. This one was a lot of fun to work with, and it turned out really, really good. Okay, the next thing I did with the leaky faucet sound, with the reverb applied to it, I recorded it, and then I added another reverb to it. I don't like stacking reverbs because for one thing, I want to make sure that the audio doesn't end up clipping. And for another thing, I don't want to send a reverb into another reverb, if that makes sense. I prefer to apply a second reverb effect to an already reverberated track. It helps me monitor the overall sound a lot better, and that sounded like this on its own. Wow. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, okay, yeah, this is awesome. Okay. And when it's all put together, it sounded like this. And you could tell that I was losing it at this point in the process because I got really, really excited at one point listening to it back with the reverb effect applied. Oh, that's so much cooler. What? Oh, that's sick. And then later on I said this. Now I have my own attention again. What did I mean by saying, now that I've regained my own attention? Was it sounds like I was asleep at the wheel. But anyway, I was super tired. So we're almost there. I decided that even though it sounds almost perfect, I decided that I wanted to get a greater sense of space. So export the track, open it up in a new document, and then applied Waves Center Stereo to it and pushed the sides super, super hard. And that sounded like this. Which is the final product. And to me, that was all it needed, because it makes it feel like even though the monster is nearby the player, it also makes it feel like the player is being surrounded by the monster, even though it's not there yet. And I really, really like it. So take it away, Joe from the past. Close it out, buddy. I mean, this is why I love sound design. And I really do look forward to doing more of these. I already intend on doing a retrospective of some work that I've already done for Rapid Eye Madness. And I look forward to doing that video too. So I hope that this was a fun journey for everybody. It was for me. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great night.